It started like any ordinary morning: numbers, conversations, routine. But in a single heartbeat, everything changed. A sound shattered the air, and within seconds, life as we knew it was gone, replaced by chaos, fear, and impossible choices. What I witnessed that day wasn't just tragedy, it was a moment that redefined survival, humanity, and what it truly means to hold on when everything is falling apart. We were in the trading room, just like any normal morning. Everyone was focused, watching numbers, speaking with clients, settling into the rhythm of the day. Then suddenly, off to our right, there was this massive explosion. It was so loud it stopped everything. We turned and saw a huge fireball collapse inward on itself, and thousands of papers just burst out into the sky around the trade center. We rushed over to see what had happened. There was a massive hole torn into the side of the building. People were standing in the windows, and some were faced with something unimaginable. The heat was so overwhelming that a few made the heartbreaking decision to jump. I was born in Hamilton, Ontario, between Toronto and Niagara Falls. So yeah, I'm Canadian. Later on, in the year 2000, I moved to New York City for work. I brought my wife and kids with me, and I was working for a company called EUR Brokers, MaxCore. I was a money market broker, trading US dollars against European currencies. That morning, September 11th, started like any other. I loved the energy of the city. I'd catch the 5:42 train, head into Hoboken, then take the path into Manhattan. There was something electric about stepping into the World Trade Center every morning. It gave you a sense of purpose. I'd usually be at my desk around 6:40 or 6:50. You had to start early because the markets never sleep. Asia would be closing, Europe halfway through their day, and we were just getting started. At the time, I never really thought about the possibility of something like this happening. Even though there had been a bombing years earlier, it just wasn't something on my mind. Terrorism didn't feel real or close. When the first plane hit the other tower, we were all still working, talking through market activity, reviewing what happened overnight. Then that explosion happened. We saw the fireball, the debris, the chaos outside. At first, the reports coming in said it might have been a small aircraft that went off course. Even the building announcements told us everything was secure and that we should return to our desks. Some people who had been there during the 1993 bombing decided to leave right away. But for me, there was no clear indication of danger. I stayed. I went back to my desk and started answering calls. Clients, friends, even family checking in. Then a friend of mine from Canada called me. He was yelling, telling me to get out immediately. That's when it started to feel serious. About 17 minutes after the first plane, the second one hit. I had just grabbed a colleague, and we were on our way out of the trading room when it happened. The plane struck between the 78th and 85th floors. I was on the 84th. The wing cut straight through our trading floor. If we had stayed even a few minutes longer, we wouldn't have made it. The impact threw us across the room. Ceiling tiles crashed down everywhere. Once I got back on my feet, I found my colleague, Mike. We brushed ourselves off and headed into the hallway where others were gathering. The elevators were gone, so we moved toward the stairwell and began heading down. A couple of flights below, we ran into two men carrying a woman. They warned us we couldn't go any further. The smoke and fire below were too intense. Around that moment, we heard someone calling for help. One of my colleagues and I tried to go down and assist a man trapped on the floor below us. But the smoke was overpowering. I couldn't breathe. I had no choice but to turn back. We started going up instead, climbing floor by floor, trying every door we could find. But every single one was locked from the inside for security reasons. By the time we reached around the 91st floor, it hit me. There was no clear way out. That's when real panic started to take over. Everything became clear in a different way. In that moment, all I wanted was to get out alive and see my wife and kids again. We started trying to make our way back down, but when we reached around our floor, or maybe just below it, the smoke had become incredibly thick. It was heavy, dark, and hard to breathe. People were lying flat on the ground, trying to stay under the worst of it, searching for any bit of air they could find. I remember feeling myself drifting, like I was about to lose consciousness, like I could just fall asleep right there. And then I heard something, a voice calling out to me, telling me to come in a certain direction. People who believe in God might understand what I mean. Others might say it was just adrenaline or my mind trying to survive. But I know this. If I ever heard that voice again, I would follow it without hesitation. It pulled me up when I was ready to give in. I moved straight toward the flames, through the fire and thick smoke. I pressed myself along the wall, feeling my way forward, and suddenly I found an opening, a stairwell leading down. I dropped into it and began moving as fast as I could. There were 3 flights of stairs that were on fire, but I ran right through them. At that moment, I didn't feel anything. No pain, nothing. It was only later that I realized I had been badly burned. I just kept going, step after step, driven by pure instinct. Somewhere about halfway down, I came across 3 firefighters heading up. I told them I couldn't breathe properly. They told me to keep going down, that there would be help waiting below. So I pushed on. When I finally reached ground level, my only thought was to get out of that building. I came out toward the courtyard between the towers, but a security guard stopped me. At the time, I didn't fully understand why. Later, it made sense. There was debris falling, bodies, chaos raining down from above. It wasn't safe. Instead, they directed us underground, through the path system, toward the Church Street exit. As I made my way down, I ran into a colleague of mine. He was always such a kind, upbeat guy. We walked together toward the exit, trying to get out. And then, suddenly, there was another massive explosion. I looked to my right and saw a huge fireball racing toward us. I shouted at him to run. That's when the building started to collapse. I ran as fast as I could, just trying to escape. Then everything went black. I was hit in the head, and the next thing I remember, I woke up in a hospital 3 days later. At that point, I didn't fully understand what had happened. I had no idea the towers had collapsed. When our building was hit, I thought maybe it was some kind of explosion in the lower levels, like a generator blowing. Even after the first impact, that's what people were being told, that it was some kind of accident involving a small aircraft. But the reality? I was inside it. I didn't see what the world saw from the outside. My wife didn't even tell me the full truth until about a week later. My injuries were severe. I had a deep head wound on the back of my skull. About 60% of my body had burns. Even my contact lenses had melted onto my eyes. I don't even know exactly how the doctors dealt with that. An ophthalmologist had to remove them, and I went through a lot of testing afterward. There was debris embedded in my body for some time as well. I stayed in the hospital for about 12 days. Once I began to understand what had really happened, I felt restless. I was at St. Vincent's Hospital, so close to where everything took place, and it was overwhelming being that near to it all. I was restless and on edge. I couldn't stay in the city anymore. It just didn't feel right being there after everything that had happened. So eventually they brought me back home, and I started receiving care there. At that time, we had 4 children. They were still very young, around 10, 8, 6, and 3 years old. Life changed completely for all of us. For me, those first couple of years are almost a blur. I felt disconnected from everything. I avoided noise, avoided engagement, and honestly, I wasn't really present with my kids. I was just existing, not living. My wife carried everything during that time. We weren't brand new to the country, but we were still adjusting to life there. She held the family together, managing the home, taking care of the kids, keeping everything running. Meanwhile, my recovery was slow. Physically, I was healing, but mentally it took much longer. That was the harder battle. I did eventually return to work. I started part-time in March, then went back full-time in April. But going back wasn't easy, not for me, and especially not for the kids. Every evening they would sit by the window, waiting and wondering if I would come home. That kind of fear sticks with you. Around that time, there were also the anthrax scares, which only added to the anxiety. I remember telling my wife to keep her passport and the kids' passports ready, and I would carry mine into the city. If anything happened, she was to take the kids and go back to Canada immediately. When we really looked at that reality, we knew it wasn't a healthy way to live. So, by the end of the school year in 2002, we made the decision to move back to Canada. It wasn't an easy choice. We loved living in New Jersey, and we truly enjoyed being in the United States. We were even planning to buy a home there. But everything changed in an instant, and it forced us to uproot our lives. Looking back, I've been asked what helped pull me out of that empty state I was in. Honestly, I'm not sure there was one single thing. It was probably a mix of people around me, some who pushed me, some who were frustrated with how withdrawn I had become, and others who encouraged me to open up. There were people who told me I needed to share my story. They said it wasn't just about what I went through, but that it could give hope to others. That idea stayed with me. But there's also something else I carry with me every day. I lost 61 colleagues that day. That's not something you just move past. There's a weight that comes with surviving when so many others didn't. You start asking yourself questions. Could I have done more? Could I have gone back? Could I have helped someone else? Deep down, I know that if I had gone back, I probably wouldn't be here today. But that doesn't erase the feeling. That sense of survivor's guilt stays with you. It becomes part of who you are. And even though the building collapsed not long after I made it out, that reality, how close it all was, never really leaves you. I don't really know who first said that I might have been the last person to get out. It's not something I ever focused on. What I do know is that only a handful of people made it out from above the impact zone. There were 4 of us in total. 2 of them were colleagues of mine who somehow escaped without physical injuries. Another was the man we had tried to help earlier, Stanley. And then there was me. I came very close to not making it at all. So I guess people assumed I was the last one out before the tower collapsed. For a long time, I didn't want to be seen or recognized. It was hard facing people, especially the families of those who didn't survive. Some of my colleagues' spouses would ask me questions. Things like, "Did you see him?" Or, "Was she scared?" Those are questions that stay with you. There's a weight that comes with being one of the ones who made it out when so many others didn't. Even now, I still stay in touch with some of them. Every year on September 11th, I reach out. It's important to me to keep that connection, even though it's never easy. There's always that feeling, you got out and they didn't. And the truth is, I didn't do anything special or different. I was just lucky, or fortunate, or blessed. I don't even know what word fits best. Over the years, I've created my own way of honoring that day. I made a decision that I would never work on September 11th again. That day is mine. I take it to reflect, to remember, and to feel gratitude for the life I still have. What I wish people could truly understand about that day is what it felt like from the inside. From the outside, you saw the scale of the tragedy. But inside, it was something else entirely. It was the look in people's eyes, the fear, the confusion, the desperation. I remember seeing people across the courtyard in the other tower, waving, trying to signal for help. That image stays with me. It's something you can't unsee. I have gone back to New York many times since then. It wasn't easy at first, but over time it became something I needed to do. I usually visit every year, but on every 5th anniversary, my wife and I go together and spend a few days there. It's a way of remembering, but also a way of facing it. If there's one more thing I'd want people to understand, it's this. People often look at me and think about what I went through, what I survived. But honestly, I don't think I had it the hardest. I really don't. My wife carried a different kind of weight. While I was unconscious, while I was mentally checked out for weeks and even months afterward, she was the one living through it in real time. She was attending funerals, supporting other families, holding our own family together, and trying to process everything at once. She didn't get to shut down the way I did. People call me strong or brave, or they give me credit for surviving. But when I look at everything, I truly believe her journey was heavier than mine. She had to keep going when everything around her was falling apart. And that kind of strength doesn't always get seen the way it should. This story goes far beyond survival. It's really about what happens after you survive something that should have taken everything from you. The physical escape is only one part. The deeper journey is mental, emotional, and even spiritual. People often think the hardest moment is the event itself, but in many cases, the real struggle begins afterward, when the noise fades and you're left alone with memories, questions, and the weight of being the one who lived. One of the most powerful layers in this story is survivor's guilt. It's not just sadness for others, it's a constant internal question. Why me? When someone walks away while others don't, it can feel undeserved, even heavy. That feeling doesn't just disappear. It becomes something a person learns to carry, reshape, and eventually use as a reason to live more intentionally. There's also the impact on family, which is often overlooked. While the survivor is recovering, loved ones are holding everything together, emotionally, practically, and silently. They carry fear, uncertainty, and grief all at once. In many ways, their strength becomes the foundation for recovery, even though their struggle isn't always visible. Another important aspect is how trauma changes identity. Before that day, life had a certain rhythm, career, routine, goals. Afterward, everything is questioned. Priorities shift. Success is no longer just about achievement. It becomes about presence, connection, and meaning. Even simple things like coming home at the end of the day take on a completely different value. And then there's the idea of purpose. Many survivors eventually feel a responsibility to share their story, not for attention, but to give meaning to what they went through. Turning pain into something that can help others becomes a way to heal. It transforms the experience from something purely tragic into something that can inspire, educate, and remind people what truly matters. At its core, this topic is about resilience, but not the kind that looks strong on the outside. It's quiet, messy, and slow. It's about continuing forward even when part of you is still stuck in the past. It's about choosing to live fully, even when you've seen how quickly life can be taken away. When you go even deeper into a story like this, you begin to understand that trauma doesn't just stay in the past. It reshapes how a person experiences the present. Ordinary things don't feel ordinary anymore. Sounds, smells, even certain moments can pull someone right back into that day without warning. It's not something you simply get over. It becomes part of your internal world, and learning how to live with it is a lifelong process. There's also a shift in how fear is understood. Before something like this, fear is often abstract, something distant or hypothetical. But after facing real, immediate danger, fear becomes very real, very physical. And yet, over time, many survivors develop a different relationship with it. They don't become fearless, but they become more aware of what truly matters and what doesn't deserve their energy anymore. Another powerful layer is the silence people go through. For a long time, many survivors don't want to talk about what happened, not because they don't remember, but because they remember too clearly. Putting those experiences into words can feel like reliving them. But eventually, for some, speaking becomes part of healing. Sharing the story allows them to take control of it, rather than letting it control them. There's also the reality of rebuilding trust, in life, in safety, even in the future. After experiencing something so unpredictable and devastating, it can be hard to believe that things will be okay again. That sense of stability has to be slowly rebuilt, often piece by piece. And it's not about returning to who they were before. It's about becoming someone new who has learned to carry both strength and vulnerability at the same time. And maybe one of the most profound changes is gratitude. Not the surface level kind, but a deep, almost overwhelming awareness of being alive. Small moments start to matter more. This with family, simple conversations, quiet mornings. Things that once felt routine now feel meaningful. Life stops being something to rush through and becomes something to truly experience. In the end, stories like this remind us that survival isn't just about escaping death. It's about learning how to live again afterward. And that kind of courage, the kind that shows up every day in quiet ways, is often the most powerful of all. That day didn't just test survival. It revealed the fragile line between ordinary life and unimaginable loss. I walked away, but I carry the voices, the faces, and the weight of that moment every single day. It taught me that life is not promised, only given, one breath at a time. And if there's anything to hold on to, it's this: live fully, love deeply, and never wait for tomorrow to become the moment that truly matters.